You ready? Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Grow Oklahoma podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mo. And on our podcast, we bring you amazing stories of innovation, community spirit, and transformative ideas right here in Oklahoma. Today, I'm super excited to have two incredible guests joining us. First off, we have Cheron Henry, a powerhouse in the financial technology world who's been making waves for over 20 years. And sitting alongside her is Dr. Maria de Lurdes Queimado. She's a professor and scientist who's passionate about STEM education and making a real difference in our community. These two have teamed up for some awesome projects like the STEAM Night at Red Oak Elementary, and believe me, their passion is contagious. So in this episode, you're going to hear a lot about their journey, their work on advocacy and mentorship, how they're shaping the lives of kids and parents in Oklahoma, and more importantly, how they are working hard to create opportunities for us. All right. Hi, Lourdes, and hi, Cheron. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Hi. Thank you for inviting us.
All right. So both of you have unique and inspiring backgrounds. So maybe just start with sharing, your personal journeys, how you grew up, and most importantly, what influenced the work you do today.
Oh, wow. So I was actually born and raised in Oklahoma. I am the middle child of three. My brother's older than I am. My sister is a little bit younger than I am. And I would say my mother's had a huge influence on what I do today, just because she has always been a volunteer. She's always promoted giving to others, and she's always promoted education. And so she was a very large influence in my life and for some of the decisions that I've made up to this point.
That's impressive. And this is Cheron, by the way, speaking. What part of Oklahoma did you grow up in?
Oklahoma City.
Wow. I bet it's changed a lot since, you were born and all that.
Oh, it has. It has. Just the strip of the highway between Oklahoma City to Norman has changed so much. There was nothing there for so many years.
Everybody keeps talking about the highway. I wonder how it was before. Was it just bushes and, tall grasses?
Yeah, it was field. It was just field.
Oh, wow. I wish I could see pictures of that because it's so unbelievable what we have right now,
It is.
Yeah. So middle child, wow. There's so many hypotheses to draw from that, but we'll save that for maybe later on. Lourdes, so I know you grew up in Portugal, right?
Correct.
Yes,
I was born in a small, very poor rural village on the outskirts of Lisbon. And I was born also on a time where we had an authoritarian dictatorial regime. So exposure to outside was non-existent, and girls were supposed to stay at home and not being educated past fourth grade. So like Cheron, my mom was really the inspiring and motivating in my life. My mom had been taken out of school when she was 9 years old. But she had a passion for reading. She was taken out of school to take care of her little brother and also to work on the fields. But my mom had a mind that was way open for anyone else in the village, and she always reached to those that were like unreachable by anyone else. So she will welcome gypsies that will come seasonally, and I had friends that were gypsies. She will reach to the poorest of the poorest, and we will share, even though we were poor, we will share toys and other things with them. And at the same time, she always fights side by side with me. I was 10 years old, and my teacher decided that I knew too much. So rather than graduating, I should stay in school and teach other kids. And my mom fight against that. And then I was 12, I was taken out of school. And my mom fight side by side with me on that. I was 18, and my family didn't want me to go to medical school. And my mom was always by my side. So with her, I learned the importance of advocating and not just for myself, but for others, and now to include everyone else in my path.
That's quite impressive. I mean, I know Portugal now as a powerhouse, in what they do, but it's just, I guess, impressive to see the gains that have been made, judging from when you grew up and when girls were not allowed to go to school to what Portugal is known for right now. And if you are at liberty to share, so if you don't go to school as a girl, what do you end up doing?
So when I was taken out of school when I was 12, I was put in places to learn how to embroider, how to, make clothes, how to cook, and things like that. So you were expected at that time to just stay home and provide for your future husband. So
Wow.
we were about 20 girls in school, and I ended up being the only one going to the university, and only 3 of us went to 7th grade.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Well, Cheron, you have 2 decades in financial technology. How did you get into that space, and what do you do right now as far as, supporting the communities you serve?
So I got into that space again through University of Oklahoma, is where I attended school. I actually started out as a zoology major, and a couple of years into that degree, I realized that I did not love it. And I realized that I was more interested in what was happening in the financial world. And so I changed majors a couple of years in, and I had a friend, networking, who was employed by a local company here in Oklahoma. It was actually called Advanced Financial Solutions at the time.
Nice.
And he knew about my job, he knew about my education, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, when you get ready to graduate, come apply here. I think you do well in this industry." And I did, and I have been with this company ever since. It's been acquired a few times, a couple of name changes, but I've still been with the same company ever since. And I would say that in supporting diverse communities and creating inclusive environments, working in this role has helped me realize that creating an inclusive environment is not always about taking big, bold actions. Sometimes it's those little acts that make people feel included. And it can be something as small as adjusting your meeting times so coworkers can go pick up their children from school. They may not have anybody else to do that, and this may be a need that they need filled just so that they can continue to work and support their families.
Yeah.
We work in a global environment, and a very large number of the colleagues that I collaborate with are in India. And so we actually had one of our meeting facilitators research music in India just so that it could be played between the different sessions of our event. And yeah, so you've got to be curious about each other, and you have to ask questions about each other, and you can't just get the information. You have to incorporate that information into your decision making. Just the little things like that tell people that they're seen, and that we understand their culture, and that they're respected, and that we understand that outside of their professional facade, they are also just regular people living life.
Imagine if companies just did that, like just little things, just little things, but they go a long way, right?
It is. And,
Yeah.
I love how we want companies to do it, but at the same time, it starts with the individuals who are in
Individual.
those positions.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got to find little ways to make people feel included, and seen.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Before I move to Lourdes, I had some, follow-up questions for you. So for at the 5th grade level, because I mentioned 5th grade because I know you're heavily involved in elementary school. Can you break down what you do, like what a day in the life of a financial technology worker does?
Well, it depends on the role that you're in. So, so for today, what I do is I manage a team of product owners, and their main goal is to take the requirements from our clients and to modify our products, so our software systems, to meet those requirements. We work a lot with Visa, MasterCard, American Express, those types of different companies, the banks, the major financial institutions that are around the world.
Mhm.
So, I mentioned I've been with this company for 22 years. My first role was as an implementation specialist.
Hmm.
And so I would travel to different banks in the United States and in a couple of other countries and install their processing systems. And I would
Yeah.
train them. And so a large part of that has allowed me to just see the diversity in different roles, from the presidents of these banks all the way down to people who might work the midnight shift operating the sorters.
Yeah.
And so you have to adjust needs based on who you are interacting with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And everybody is needed in order to make our financial system work. There's no one person who does it alone. Everyone is needed.
Nice. Last question before we go to Lourdes. I imagine that being in the space you are, which is heavily male dominated, how do you navigate imposter syndrome? Assuming you've had that before. If you haven't, just some form of barriers, experience just being in a high stake, male dominated industry like financial technology. And what advice do you have for others who feel like they don't belong in certain spaces?
That is a very good question. You are correct. There are often times where I am the only woman in the room, or I am the only person of color in the room,
Right.
and you wonder, how did I get here? The best thing that I can do is to listen and make sure that I am self-aware, understand where the gaps in my knowledge are and work on those gaps so that I can get to a point where I know my role forwards, backwards, inside out. And then you start to recognize that when your colleagues see this and they start to turn to you for guidance and they accept, what you have to offer in these environments. And when they do that, you need to recognize it for yourself and realize that they are coming to you because you offer value. The other piece of advice that I would give is to understand that feeling is going to come back.
Yeah.
With each new role that you accept and with every challenge that you are facing, you're gonna have that imposter syndrome is going to come back. And it's a continuous process unless you're stagnant. So feeling that way means that you are growing in your role. And the way to help overcome it is to make sure that you are educated, you understand your role, and that you work on your own self-confidence and you're self-aware of
Yeah.
who you are and what you have to offer.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Lourdes, sorry to leave you just, hanging. But I'm curious about you a lot. So you have an MD degree, you have a training in pathology, a master's degree in oncobiology, and a PhD, oh my goodness, in molecular biology. So tell me how you went from just, being that little girl who your mom had to stand solidly behind you to make sure that you got all the requirements and then all of the achievements you've had so far. How did you find yourself in the US finally? And what has that been like for you? And congrats, by the way, on all of your achievements.
Wow, that's a big question. So I think that drive is what took me through all that, but one's background is always the events that happened before, the people that you encounter, and there were two main things that shaped me. One of them was through a mobile library that between the age of 6 and 10, that was, besides my mom, my only contact to the external world. So I know how important the books are, but also the driver of that library was my first mentor. He will look for specific books for me and kind of grew me into a world I didn't know it existed.
Wow.
And then when I was 12 years old and I was going to be taken out of school, a math teacher stepped in and gave me the courage to keep going because he built my confidence by saying, if your parents can't afford your school, I will pay for it.
Wow.
And those things shape you and shape the way you are going. So from there on, I knew I could do it. I had the confidence on me. I was still a very timid girl, unable to understand mentorship or anything like that. But I had confidence on me, and I had this passion for learning. So that drove me to not just keep learning, but also to bringing that. I started teaching really early because I started tutoring. That's what paid for all the studies I did. And so even as a teenager, I was trying to tell other people that they could do it. If I could do it, they could do it. And I think that's what keeps me engaged through all these. And STEM was my passion. So what else to do than try to bring others into the field?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that was just amazing what you just shared right now. And we've had about 20 guests so far on the podcast. Your story really mirrors what Maggie Robinson shared in episode 10, as well as Carla Fennell in episode 15, where they talked about teachers, paying for their tuition when, there was a gap and all that. And just imagine that seed of kindness that was sown in your life, and just the trees that has flourished from there. And I guess this is where I would like to just leave this with the audience. Like, you don't know what just little things, touch points you're having on individuals' lives, what it can be like in the future. So again, just wanted to share that. And thanks for really beautifully sharing that, Lourdes. I'm curious to know the driver who served as your first mentor and the teacher who, paid for your tuition when you were 12. Do you still keep in touch with them? Are they still with us?
No. So unfortunately, I was a 12-year-old. There were no cell phones. There were no middle of contact.
Yeah.
The teacher was not from my village, was not teaching in the village. My parents did not even have a TV. So I lost contact with him. He never knew the impact he had in my life because my dad said, no, thank you. My daughter is getting out of school. So we never follow up with him. I did try to identify him. I don't even have his name.
Wow.
I tried to identify him. I contacted his family later on through the school, but he was no longer living.
This is so sad. But you know what? Something beautiful came out of it, and every stride you've made is a testament to. I mean, he started that, right? So I'm sure in everything you do, you honor him, and that legacy lives on. So we'll take that as a win and a win. Yeah.
And I think that one thing that came from out of there, I mean, thanks to him, I became aware of the importance of teaching.
Yeah.
And not just I do. As a mentor, bring that in, but also I've been supporting over the years teachers all across the country. There is this thing called this teacher's choice. I always find projects there, particularly those that are either related to math or reading, and I always try to support those.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Now, before we move on to the next bit of question, a follow-up question to this would be, coming from a background as you did where education was not initially encouraged for girls, what advice would you give to young women who might be facing similar societal pressures today? Because we do know there are some communities where women are frowned or girls are frowned from, upon when they go to school and all that.
I think the first reassurance is that you are worth. And if you have a dream, follow it. Do not stop. There are many of us out there ready to support you, ready to talk with you. Advocate for yourself. Don't give up. And I know sometimes this is hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, the next question for Cheron, starting this will be about mentorship. So I think both of you have kind of alluded to it. I just thought to tease that out. But For Sharon, with your extensive experience in networking, how can professionals use these connections to enhance their careers while also uplifting others? Especially for women,
Um,
where I feel like we're not very strong when it comes to that, maintaining and sustaining those relationships.
I think it's hard because we face a lot of different phases in our lives where we
Right.
can get out there more, and then sometimes we have to be more focused on our families.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of the key ways that you can enhance your career and uplift others is by volunteering, because you're going to work with a diverse set of individuals in sometimes challenging situations. And then when you collaborate, you are going to bring your expertise to help others who may not otherwise have access to someone with your knowledge, and you can help them. It could be accounting, it could be plumbing, or any number of skills that's going to fulfill a need. And then when you're doing that and you're working with these individuals from other industries, then you can take the knowledge and the connections back to your workplace. And, you might call them up. I'm facing a challenge at work. I remember you discussed something similarly when we were helping this individual. Can you walk me through how you addressed that? When I was on the board of directors for Neighborhood Services Organization, that was a key thing that I noticed, is that I met structural engineers. I met people who ran processing plants. And then I also met moms who had the time and the desire to volunteer.
Yeah.
And it just allows you to pull in knowledge from other disciplines and apply that in your own field. And in the process of doing so, we were helping underserved communities in our area. So young women who were aging out of foster care. And, they didn't know how to balance a checkbook. They didn't know how to pay bills, those types of things. Single mothers who maybe were coming out of a situation where they weren't necessarily safe at home. And then also individuals who are experiencing challenges with their mental health. These are all communities that sometimes get left behind. And when you're working together and you're figuring out how to help individuals in these communities, it helps you bring that spirit of help, collaboration into your workplace so that you can do the same for your employees and for your clients, and for yourself, right? I mean, you're advocating for other individuals also helps you advocate for yourself as well.
Those are really great points, and I love your emphasis on self-advocacy, but also making sure that we're intentional with the touch points we make when it comes to networking and all that. Now, for what would you say were the biggest barriers you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Is this one for me?
Yes, yeah. I'm still on you, don't worry.
Oh, wow. This is going to sound very strange to some, but I think one of the biggest barriers to my career is me, because sometimes you get in your own way, and sometimes you have to change that habit, and you have to work on your own confidence, and you have to take a good hard look at yourself to see if you are doing everything that you can do in order to be successful where you are hoping to succeed. And I think a lot of people get in their own way. And once you move beyond getting in your own way, then you can focus on outside influences that can impact your success. In addition to that, we have a constant learning curve in this industry. Yep. Because payments and processing is always changing. We go from people writing checks to people using debit cards, cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer processing. Right. And you've got to stay on top of these things. Otherwise, you'll fall behind and you'll become obsolete very, very fast. And these are just things that have happened in my career alone, right? So there's no telling what's going to happen here in the next several years.
Yeah. And I think you said is twice now. I feel like we need to highlight that. So when you talked about how you overcame imposter syndrome, how you overcome it is to listen, to be self-aware, to know those gaps in your knowledge, and know how to overcome them. So thanks for highlighting the importance of self-development. The world is moving at such a speed now that you're just gonna get left behind if you don't catch up with it. And there's so many resources out there. So educating yourself and filling those knowledge gaps. I wanted to highlight that because you said that twice now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. So lastly for you, before we move on to move to Lourdes will be this. Financial literacy is, I think it's critical, yet is an often overlooked topic. What are some simple but powerful financial strategies that people, especially minorities or people of color, should be aware of?
I have to go back to advice that my mother gave me when I was younger.
Yeah,
And
what was
and
that?
and you said simple but powerful.
Yeah.
So one of the first things she said is just don't charge more on a credit card than you can afford to pay off at the end of the month. And
Ron,
and
this table you're on.
we And I mean, this is something she told me growing up my entire life. And I
Wow.
will admit that, yeah, I fell into the trap at college. I got
Who
that first credit
hasn't?
card. We all fall into that trap.
Yeah.
But I can also tell you that I was responsible with it. And once I did finally pay it off, because I didn't follow that advice
Mm,
always,
mm,
but once I did pay it off, I never went back. I never went back.
mm.
And so the second piece of advice to add on to that is just don't try to keep up with other people. Um, you don't always have to have the newest, hottest, best. If what you have is working for you, then you don't have to have this big house, this huge car. What you have is working for you.
Yeah.
And when you have those two pieces of advice, it trickles down to the rest of your financial literacy. It benefits you.
Yeah.
You're going to have better credit because you're not, going into debt behind different things.
Yeah.
You're going to get favorable loan terms.
Mm.
You are going to have that money to save and that money to invest because you're not struggling to make minimum payments on things that are going to be obsolete next week.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
live that life, and it's going to help you be more genuine to who you are, and ultimately you are going to be more free because you don't have those burdens on your back.
I mean, this is a great word, especially in our communities where we get so carried away with flash in the pan lifestyle and with social media just being, you want to compare yourself with other people. So I love how you tie those two things together. First, what your mom gave you, the tip your mom gave you about don't put so much on your credit card that you can pay for in a month. And then don't compare yourself with someone else. You don't know where they're getting their money from. You don't know what kind of debt they're
Right.
into. You just see the flashy
right.
lifestyle and then you get yourself in a pickle. So hope this, stays with everyone. And thanks a lot, Cheron. Now, Lourdes, over to you. How did you make your way from Portugal to the US? And I had a question about just your science as well. But let's start with your pathway from Portugal to the US. How long have you been here for?
I came in 96, so almost 30
20
years.
30 years, wow. I almost said 20.
Almost 28, 28 years.
Yeah. No,
So,
29, almost 29 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I had finished my medical school, done pathology, and I was doing pathology because I wanted to do research and realized I couldn't do research as much as I wanted. So I wrote my own grant for the PhD, and I came with the PhD grant just for a month to learn some new techniques and realized I couldn't go back because I didn't have the funds to apply those techniques. So I stayed. I finished my PhD between Portugal and UT Southwestern Medical Center. And then...
in Dallas?
Uh-huh.
Nice, yeah.
And then I started there as faculty, but was not a tenure position. So I was still waiting for my green card when I applied to be a faculty in many places. And Oklahoma was the place that I felt like home. And so I came here, and over the years, the support from my department and the feeling that it is a family rather than the competition I saw in other places.
Yeah.
And the growth that Oklahoma and OU-HSCS has kept me in.
Oh, great. So how long have you been in OU, by the way?
Since 2002.
Okay. And that's quite a while. And your department, otolaryngology,
Yes.
sorry, where's that
Correct.
housed in? What department? Is that ENT?
Yeah, it's ENT and is part of the College of Medicine.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I think you're the only person I know who works there. All right. Um, now, you've talked a lot about mentoring, and I feel like it's something we need to tease a little bit. You've also talked about the impact it's had on your life. What qualities do you think makes for a great mentor, and how can institutions better support underprivileged students in STEM fields?
So I think there are many qualities that make for a great mentor, but I think the most important one, which I saw, on that math teacher, on that driver of the bus that came with the mobile library to my village, is a genuine interest in the mentee well-being and their goal. Because you can be a great mentor, but if you don't have a particular interest in what does your mentee want to do, what do they want to be, then you might not be guiding them in the right direction. Of course, there are other qualities that probably are equally important. That is a communication. And clear path for communication. You need to have open communication. You need to have systematic communication. For me, I think it's really important to lead by example, to try to not just motivate, but inspire young, either adults or kids. And I try to do a lot of work outside school with kids. I think it's really important to inspire them, to let them know that, their imagination is their limit. So I think that encouraging creativity and open doors, if you don't open a door, someone that does not have access to it will not know their potential. So networking, like Cheron and you have been great about, is extremely important.
Wow. Those are great tips, genuine interest in the mentee and also knowing what their potential looks like. But I think that also fits into the relationship how you do the life together with them, setting those goals and seeing how what you're providing to the mentee can help serve their purpose. But it also comes from a place of relationship and that genuine intention, right, that you have, with them. Thanks for sharing that. Now, let's talk a little bit about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Science and medicine often feel inaccessible to the general public. How do you think researchers can better communicate their work in ways that empower communities rather than exclude them?
I think we have been too closed into ourselves. We need to open our language. We need to make it accessible to others. And we need to be able to communicate the impact and the importance of what we do. So we kind of research, and particularly, I work in molecular biology, cancer treatment, cancer risk. We have this language that is like a unique language. We need to relearn our language and make it accessible. We need to translate what we do into small ways that we can share with patients. And that is not easy, but is also not funded. And it's hard because when you try to take your science to the next level and you don't have the funding for that, makes it very hard to happen.
Yeah.
I had an example of we discover so when a patient has head and neck cancer and it comes to the clinic, most of the time is in part because he smoked, because smoking is a cancer risk.
Yeah.
And so we always know that smoking brings worse prognosis, but we reported 2 years ago that if you stop smoking just before you start treatment, you change your chances to respond to therapy by a fourfold.
Fourfold,
And
wow.
so you respond better to chemotherapy by fourfold.
Wow.
And we are trying to bring these to the clinic and, sharing with physicians, but also trying to bring the full story to the clinic. And for that, we need funding. And we haven't yet been able to fund that. So it's hard.
Fourfold, that's a good odds,
Yes.
I'm thinking how heterogeneous cancers can be. That's a very good odd.
Yeah, we saw that for those that have laryngeal cancer, you are on laryngeal cancer because it's of your voice. It's on the voice box. So if you stop smoking before therapy, your chances of keeping your larynx extend to up to 7 years. So it's tremendous impact. But again, that is very hard.
Hard to translate, yeah. Yeah. All right, a follow-up question would be this. Can you describe what your research sets out to do? Like, what's your research about in very simple terms?
So we study the impact of tobacco products, but also cannabis in cancer risk, so prevention of cancer, and also the cancer outcomes. And we study, for example, how electronic cigarettes might reduce the harm in the context of previous tobacco smokers. So we look at that not just from the lab perspective, but from the participant perspective. We have several studies that are recruiting for smokers or for smokers that have changed into electronic cigarettes. These are studies paid and funded by the National Cancer Institute. And the goal is to learn more and to influence tobacco-related policies so people can be safer.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I know I don't do a lot of tobacco research, but from a layperson's perspective, tobacco seems very serious and cannabis seems a little bit innocuous. How would you think about that, perception of risk? People would think, oh, cannabis is, it's natural. It's, it's not that bad. How do you conflate the risks between tobacco products and cannabis products and the impact it might have on oral and throat cancer?
Wow, that is a big question. We all know that tobacco smoke increases cancer risk. There is no doubt about that. We do have in our state, cannabis is legal from a medical perspective, and cannabis, particularly the individual cannabinoids, might have a potential anti-inflammatory and in some cases maybe a cancer benefit in some cases, not in others. However, even those that are prescribed cannabis as medical cannabis, most of the time, the most frequent mode of use is cannabis smoke. And I want to make a big difference between using cannabinoids and smoking cannabis. Because while cannabinoids that are the products inside the cannabis might have, and some do have, an anti-inflammatory effect, cannabis smoke as very high level of carcinogens in components that cause cancer, and in some cases, cannabis smoke has higher levels of cancer-causing agents than tobacco smoke. So I think we need to be aware of that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very insightful. And then I think the next question for both of you with this, how did you both meet? Because in looking at your trajectories, from Portugal to Dallas to Oklahoma, and then Sharon, you've always been in Oklahoma City, but you're in the fintech world. How did your path cross? And that will also lead to my question about what you both do together, which I think is fantastic, and it's probably the only reason why I brought you to the podcast. But I've learned so much about you that I came up with so many more questions. But so let's get to the meat of today's episode itself. How did you both meet?
PTA.
Ah, can you walk me through how that, connection? You go to PTA, you see moms. Okay, I have a 5-year-old. My experience with public schools here just started last year. It's been a lot of information, a bit overwhelming, and I'm like, how does people do it? Like, women are already busy, and they run quite a tight ship. So my goal is get to PTA, scan around, and then just go back home. How did you just make that, like, oh, I want to hang with this person and then do something together? Can you walk me through that, how that came
Yeah.
came about? Sorry.
I'll actually start. No, you're fine. So I volunteered for a few events when my son, he's 11 now, started attending public school. And in the course of volunteering for those events, the then president asked me if I would consider being president. My first response was, I don't know if I'm going to have the time for that because I work full time. I've got 2 kids. And so she convinced me. And I said, okay, well, if you can't find anybody else, I'll go ahead and I'll do it. And so I went from being a volunteer to actually running the PTA for a couple of years. And I don't do that now, but I did it then.
Yeah.
The National PTA and the State PTA actually host a convention every year. And one of the things that they mentioned were the availability of grants and how schools could apply for grants to have different events and activities funded at their schools. During that time, I had gotten to know Lurdes, and she had mentioned her research, and she mentioned that she writes grants.
Yeah.
And so the first year I approached her and I said, hey, they have this grant program, and it would be amazing if you could help us apply for these grants. And so we discussed it, but we didn't actually get around to it that first year. The second year that I was president, I came to her and I sent her to the website and I said, is there any way that you can help us with this? And she has tight deadlines and she was doing her own grants and she said yes. She said, yes, I will make this happen. We can get this done.
Wow.
And so I am forever thankful because that was the first year that we were able to hold that event since the pandemic, where we actually had a real budget because we got the grant the first year.
Funded,
we were able. Right. The first year that we put it on after the pandemic, we kind of had to make it work with no budget whatsoever. And so it was a lot of volunteers, a lot of piecemeal. We weren't able to provide food or anything like that. But with her help, we were able to make this event so much bigger and so much better. And then with her connections, we were able to do that as well. And, we're just 2 representatives here of this event. So I also have to mention that we've got a whole team of individuals, moms, who help us with just things as simple as making flyers, speaking with the principal, working with organizing this event. So we do have a whole team of individuals who help us, and I don't want to discount what they have contributed to this process.
Of course, yeah.
Either.
Wow. Oh, wow. So we've heard from you, Sharon. I'm curious to know from Lourdes' perspective, like, how did you go from just doing your science and all that, and then to seeing there was a need to be met with, the grant you guys put together? And what was that like for you, just to step a little bit away from the core science you do to, doing something related to STEM and education?
So, like you, I go to the PTA meetings, and as going to the PTA meetings, I already have an adult daughter, so I have gone to many PTA meetings. And over the years, I did participate in a lot of different STEM events at different schools, either as a judge or helping kids doing posters. And on this particular meeting that Cheron was sharing, was a PTA meeting, there was mention that they were looking for volunteers, and one of the areas was STEM. And I'm like, I don't have much time, but STEM just called my name. So I signed up to volunteer for STEM, and then Cheron brought the idea of the grant, and I'm like, these are completely different grants. I don't know.
Right.
But I have the expertise on grants. Why not trying it?
Yeah.
And they are very different grants, but they are accessible. They you need to learn a lot about the school, what is great. And it's been a blessing because through these, we had our first grant last year, and then we wrote it again. And this year we got the grant again. And last year we had over 20 people coming from OU, including my chairman, who came, he's a surgeon, and he came to show suturing bananas, which was a great attraction for the kids and the first probably ever exposure. But what is really cool about creating this is that we get, because the PTA is made by moms and dads that come from different
walks of life,
parts of life.
Yeah.
So we brought people from all different fields, we had not just STEM, we made STEAM, so we included art. So Cheron invited someone that was great at wood building. So there were so many things. We are going to have an event on bridge building.
Wow.
It's STEM and STEAM. And then I talked with the medical students that I mentor a lot of medical students. We had several of them coming and talking about their path. We had someone that is a communication manager, a major, that came to talk about her path in communication and how she joined science. Through this, we are invited by other schools to go do career day. This has become a snowball, and I am so excited that OU is coming and your office is coming to support us.
Yes. Shout out to OU Health, TISA HPRC, the Office Citizen Council Center, the Office of Access and Opportunity, Gigi Jones, especially Jennifer, and everyone just working together to pull this off. This and CERTEC as well, which is the education core of the Citizen Council Center, and wow, this is just amazing. And I just love how it's been, almost 5 years now of collaborating, and you guys still keep doing that together. Now, for those who might not know, can you tell us a little bit more about STEAM Night, actually how it impacts the community at Red Oak Elementary? Cheron, if you want to get started on that.
Sure. So the event it encourages children and their families to expand their science education beyond what they see in the classroom, and they get to experience how science, technology, engineering, art, mathematics shape our world, and maybe it will help them think about how they might influence those fields in the future. For us, due to the diverse nature of our student body, we do advertise the event in 3 different languages. And also, we are a school that provides deaf education as well. And so we often are able to have an interpreter there as well for our students who are hearing impaired. In the past, we've been able to partner with the community, similar to what Lurdes has already said, and we were able to bring in the Pioneer Library System, the OU Health Science Center, Bison Builds Woodworking, different engineering firms to hold and support this event, just to expose children to different industries that they may not be aware of. Even, kind of coming back to myself, what I do today, I had no idea that this even existed when I was in elementary school. And so I think the same can be said for a lot of the students that we work with, that they are not aware of some of these opportunities until we introduce it to them through these types of events.
Yeah. And thanks for, I saw the flyers. I thought it was just the cutest thing so far. Can you mention 3 languages you guys make those accessible to? Yeah.
So we've been doing it in English, Vietnamese, and Spanish.
This is so great. This is so great. And given that I've been doing this for a while now, from the parents' perspective, you're able to capture that. What do they say this program has helped them with when it comes to especially, understanding more about opportunities that might be available for their children or words?
I think you've already put it into, you've already said it. It helps them understand opportunities that might be available for their children. If you are never exposed to an environment, then there are a lot of people who live their entire lives not realizing the possibilities of what's out there.
Right.
And I think we can all probably look at our parents, and our parents can look at what we do.
Yeah.
And there are probably aspects of our careers that our parents never really knew existed. And so we are exposing not only the children, but also the parents to these fields as well, and maybe opening their minds for the guidance that they're going to provide so that they can encourage their children to enter into these fields.
Thanks a lot. Now, for you, Lurdes, my question for you would be for the scientists, especially those of us who do research and all that. I imagine that when you had to put that grant together, you probably had your plate full, but perhaps being able to have a healthy distraction of doing something new, but where you could bring in your complementary grant writing skills also helped with those cognitive shifts that happens in academia. But my question for you would be this: for researchers like us, especially parents or maybe moms or dads who are looking to get more involved in STEM, especially empowering communities, underserved communities, how can they get started? And what would you say are some best practices to make sure they don't get burnt out, but they still want to contribute?
I will say join a PTA. Go to those PTA. Go to those PTA meetings. You are going to get out of there refreshed.
Okay.
It's a break in your day, but also you are going to see how you can impact your school. And I need to say that I first learned that when my late husband was undergoing chemo treatment and a transplant at MD Anderson. And I had a 6-year-old, and I joined a school there where parents were so enrolled, despite the fact that most parents had someone being treated at MD Anderson. And you could see the impact that that made for the school. And so I made a rule for myself that I will go to PTA meetings, even if I was too busy or if my grant deadline was next day. And I think that has changed not just me, but has changed other people around me, and most importantly, the kids on those schools.
Right.
So my recommendation is join the PTA, go there, and you will see how different your path is important to create a difference in the school.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that. And I feel like this message is for me because I just try to do the barest minimum, but thanks for challenging me today. And I hope other listeners as well, how we can just push that boundary a little bit. And I also imagine even for your children, we talk about other people's kids, and the impact it had on them. But I imagine your kids seeing you guys take that, helm of leadership and leading that way is also encouraging to them and inspiring to them to see.
Absolutely. It was a point of pride for my kids to say that I was running the PTA and that I would come to the events. And I know this might be unorthodox, but I want to turn it back around to you, Dr. Mo, and say that you said that you often try to do the bare minimum, but with our PTA, because all of us, a lot of us are working moms. Something as simple as taking an hour out of your day to go to the school to make copies of the flyers so that they can go home is huge. So your bare minimum may seem like bare minimum to you, but
it's something.
It is something that is huge when you are helping out with an organization that purely runs on volunteers.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I'm not a minimalist in most areas of my life, but I find that because I'm not able to do so much PT, I feel so bad that, I'm not doing as much as I can because I just don't have the time. But thanks for reminding me that, a little is better than nothing, and just give whatever you can. Yeah.
Mo, you can also just write a grant.
Oh, come on, this. I
It
needed
does
this as an
Absolutely.
intervention for me.
it does not compare with our grants.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine, because our grants are like a totally different base. Perhaps I'll reach out to you for tips on that. But let me get a little bit more involved in PTA and describe the scope of the problem, because I imagine different school districts have different needs, and tailoring it to the needs of the funder will be great. Now we're kind of
Well,
winding down. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Cheron. Yeah,
I also want to add something
sure.
regarding the
Sorry,
STEM
Lourdes.
event,
Yeah.
because your listeners might care about it. One of them is we offer free food thanks to this grant, so there will be food for
Wow.
everyone and drinks.
Wow.
The other
Nice.
thing is we also offer door prizes that are usually science STEM kits that go home with the kids. And we usually do a lot of door prizes. So last year we had a teacher giving us 20 different sets of kits that went home with the kids. So I think that also brings the STEM event into the homes.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I know by the time we release this episode, your event stated for 6th of March will have come and gone. But for the sake of those who might want to be involved for next year, can you just paint a little bit of a picture of what you expect for this year's event?
Sure. We've got, like we mentioned before, the OU Health Science Center is coming out, and we're going to have several of y'all students and colleagues are going to have booths there. They're going to do suturing. We've got strawberry extraction that's coming. We also have the MOV vehicle that's coming out from the OU Health Science Center. We've got the mobile maker lab coming out from the Pioneer Library. The University of Oklahoma Flight Academy is coming out. We've got the Mathnasium of Southwest Oklahoma City that's coming out. I feel like I'm naming a lot of people. And it just kind of showcases the collaboration that we have when we as a community come together to advance our kids and advance our community.
Yeah.
Hope that answered your question. Oh, and pizza and door prizes.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that already. Yeah. And then the bus is also coming. The Move bus is also coming, which would be
Yes.
great. Yeah. All right. I guess, as we wind down from this episode, I think it's really been nice having you both on the podcast and just, sharing your experiences and things you're passionate about. So thank you to both. So I guess for Lurdes to be this, in research, setbacks are common, right? What's your advice for young professionals who feel discouraged by failures or challenges? I know we didn't highlight that a lot, but I imagine for the amount of success you've had, you've also had some things that really didn't work out quite well, but that never still stopped you from, pressing further. For those who might, feel stuck or feel like, oh, you know what, I'm so discouraged by these failures or these challenges, what words of advice would you like to give them to keep going?
Wow, setbacks are so common, so common. They happen too many times to count. I think the main advice is trust in yourself, get a mentor, be resilient. Setbacks most of the time are not because you did something wrong. It's because there is a lot of us doing things and it's highly competitive and the funding is not enough.
Yeah.
It's not because you didn't put a great grant together. It's because there is not enough funds for all great grants. So revise, resubmit, revise, resubmit.
Yep.
Be patient.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm Cheron, for you, what strategies do you think has helped you find a balance between the success you've garnered so far in your career and then that personal fulfillment?
You have to admit, and I won't say you, but I have admitted that I cannot do everything. And I think as women, we try to do everything and to always be there and to be everything for everyone. And we have to admit that we can't do everything. And so I have to ask myself, what will be my regrets if, and this sounds dramatic, but if I die tomorrow, what am I going to regret? If I die next week, what am I going to regret? And that just helps you set your compass for what is most important in that moment. Your balance is going to change from day to day. So one day I might be able to focus on something with my career. I have a project that's due. I'm going to put in those 15 hours. I'm sorry, we can't go to the park today.
Yeah.
But then another day, I'm going to be able to focus on my kids and whatever adventure they have planned for me that day. And I'll be able to truly immerse myself into that.
Okay.
So it's going to change day to day. And then also remind yourself that that my balance is not going to be the same as somebody else's balance. It's not going to look the same. You know, we're moms, and so we have to do that, prioritize, and it's going to change every single day.
Okay. So rapid fire questions for both of you. For Cheron, first, starting with you. If you could create a mentorship program or initiative, what would you focus on?
I would focus on helping women and children thrive after divorce. It impacts every single day of your life.
And what's one word you would use to describe your career journey so far?
Fluid.
Fluid?
Yes, fluid.
I like that. Yeah, it makes sense because you talked about knowing those gaps and feeling it and, being self-aware. Okay. And for Lurdes, if you had unlimited resources, what STEM initiative would you start tomorrow?
I will bring STEM fairs to every single elementary school. And I mean
because
it.
Why not? Yeah. Oh, I know you mean it. I know you mean it.
Because elementary school is the time where you are open to discover. It's the time when if you don't see it, might not happen. And our schools, and we are in Oklahoma, and unfortunately, science is not a priority in our schools.
Yeah. But we need to catch them young, right?
Yes.
And then for you, Lurdes, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Get a mentor early on. Stop trying to do everything by yourself.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what Cheron also shared. You cannot do everything. Now, lastly, when we do this podcast, we have guests leave questions for the next guest. So the question that was left behind from Michelle Fair, who was on the podcast before you guys, was, what would you be doing differently this year than you did last year? And then once you're done answering that question, what question would both of you like to recycle for the next guest? You don't know who the next guest will be, so the question is just anything you can think of would be good to leave, for other guests. Yeah.
Ooh, what would I be doing differently this year than from last year?
Yes.
So this one kind of went on a personal note. I'm focusing more on my health this year than I was last year. And that is just because I did have to overcome a couple of challenges last year. I had my third and fourth knee surgeries.
Oh, wow.
And so, it wasn't horrible. They were scopes. But it is just a reminder that I want to use my knees as much as I possibly can, because when that ability is taken away from me, it impacts your life and it impacts you mentally. And so I have been focusing on just building a stronger body so that I can take advantage of these opportunities that were given to me by, cleaning up my knees so that I can have less pain and walk better.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. That's a reminder for any one of us too. And speaking of which, if you're yet to get your yearly checkup, everyone, go get that done, okay? We need healthy people in Oklahoma and the world, yeah. And how about you, Lurdes?
I think for this year, my big decision is to read more for myself. I love to read, and I read a lot. But I need to dedicate more time to myself to read.
That's a good one. Thanks. I mean, you books saved you. You talked about, the driver who brought you books. Yeah, so that makes sense. Now, finally, for you, both of you, what questions would you like to leave for the next guest? Starting with Cheron.
I really like your question of if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be? So I would like to leave that one.
Okay. All right. How about you, Lurdes?
I think my question is, what are you doing to your community? How are you investing time into those around you?
Okay, and that speaks to your spirit of wanting to bring, STEM field fairs to every elementary school and getting more involved in the PTA. So I just want to say thank you to both of you. It's been an incredible conversation, and I feel like your story reminds us that passion, mentorship, perseverance are the key ingredients to really making a real impact in our communities. I mean, even looking at Sharon's journey, your journey in fintech, and your commitment to financial literacy, and even to Lourdes' inspiring path from a small village in Portugal to even with the little seed that was sown. And I call it little, even though it's not little, it's, flourished into something so big that we can't even quantify the impact it's made on not just only her life, even trickling down to her generations and the lives that she's been impacting through her research and advocacy. I think both of you have shown that the power of lifting others up and creating opportunities where it didn't exist before. There's one thing I would take away from this conversation, which is very hard to say because I'm taking several things away, is that we should be curious, we should be involved, we should be intentional about how we support others, whether it's through mentorship, through advocacy, or just showing up, for our community. And so we hope that if you've been inspired by what you've heard today, you go out and find your own way to make a difference. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Oklahoma podcast. If you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe, to share, and leave a review. And let's keep these conversations going and continue building a community that is stronger and more inclusive Oklahoma. Thank you all so much. And I really, really, really hope you enjoyed your time on the podcast as much as I did.
Oh, thank you so much. I definitely did.
All right. I'll let you know when the episode comes out. Of course, thank you. I'll let you know when the episode comes out. And I'm sorry I can't make this team night, but I hope to be there next year.